Good evening, and welcome to Armageddon Live, Series 2, Episode 37, Structure of Daniel 8 through 12, Part 9, on this 4th of June, 2020. I'm your host, Daniel Decrypted. Alright, to make sure I get a good sound, I gotta bring this microphone in a little closer. Alright, so we're going to carry on with what we were talking about last night. So let me get myself out of the way here. And then we're going to, go over. Ooh, I didn't even open up the thing yet. Alright, so let's open up our This is not really related to last night, but it's related to the stuff I did on the Day of Atonement. You know, when we looked at with the ram and the he-goat, when you have a dead ram and a live he-goat, and then you have the man in linen in chapter 10 and the man in linen and him again in chapter 12, and you see that it points to the destruction of the ram, or burnt offering of the ram on the Day of Atonement, and then the scapegoat, and then it points, the man in linen points to both the high priest and also God, the one who stands between the two cherubim. So this is, anyway, the thing I wanted to say here is that when you go through these chapters, these are the only places where there is a vision. All the other sections, like 8:15 through 27, chapter 9 and chapter 11, those are all sections that are interpretations. So that's why this whole idea that the imagery points to the Day of Atonement, it's emphasized by this fact that you only have visions, that Daniel has only seen a vision at these particular points. Chapter 8, verses 1 through 14, chapter 10, and chapter 12. There are no other visions in these 4 chapters. Yeah. There are no other, oh no, it's more than 4 chapters. 5 chapters, yeah. There are no other visions in these 5 chapters. These are the only visions that Daniel sees. So it emphasizes that whole thing that we are indeed talking about the Day of Atonement. So that was a little thing I wanted to show you, to point out. And of course, when you look at chapter 8, it really emphasizes the ram and he-goat, because basically all the other stuff they talk about are like the little horn, and the little horn is just attached to the he-goat. I mean, well, you have something a little, the other emphasis, I guess you could say, that is there is points to heaven, but the thing you're looking at for the most part in heaven is you got the stars, but then you have the sanctuary. So it's viewing at a lot of stuff in the sanctuary. So that once again brings out this point that we are indeed taking, because the sanctuary, it talks about the sanctuary being cleansed. So it once again points out the fact that this is looking to the Day of Atonement, the cleansing of the sanctuary, or as you see it in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, it's the judgment. Anyway, as I said, that's the only thing, that's what I wanted to point out by this. Alright, so last night we were looking at the structure. So the blue, of course, is talking about the Jewish nation. The pink is talking about the Messiah, and then the orange is actually, or the yellow is the starting point in time, in history, in which this 70 weeks start. That is 490 literal years. So we looked at, last night, we looked at the structure that's in Daniel in 9 verse 24. And that, of course, was started here. It was by noticing first that we have 6 phrases, right? And we know there's 6 phrases because there's 6 verbs. And then we noticed that the first 3 phrases mention 3 terms for sin: the transgression, sins, and iniquity. But when we look at the Hebrew, it's even more telling, because we see that the first three phrases, each phrase consists of 2 Hebrew words. But when we look at the last 3 phrases, each phrase consists of 3 Hebrew words. Furthermore, the middle phrase in each of these sets of 3 uses the same verb. So you get this idea that this is somehow, it's been purposely built so that you see that there's a clear separation, right? The first 3 go together and the last 3 go together. Yeah, so that was that side. That was so that we could say, okay, so indeed 24a and 24b are separate things. And of course the sin is talking about the Jewish nation, because the Messiah can't sin. The Messiah doesn't sin. So that wouldn't apply to him. Alright, so now we're going to actually look at verse 26 and 27. Alright, so here's our verse 26 and verse 27. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Verse 26. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Verse 27. So, as you can see, week, or weeks, occurs 3 times in these 2 verses, once in verse 26 and twice in verse 27, but we have the exact same thing when it comes to desolation, desolate. So desolations, desolate, occurs once in verse 26 and twice in verse 27. So you have this very strange pattern of 3 occurrences of each, 1 in 26 and 2 in 27. Now once again, there's no way this could happen by accident, right? Especially we've already shown that desolation is tied to, well, there's 3, right? 3 phrases in verse 24 of sin. And those 3 terms for sin are connected with 3 repetitions of desolate, right? And we know in, what was it? Verse 14, I think, or 13, I think it's chapter 8, verse 13. We know that it's called the transgression of desolation. Alright, so that's the first thing we notice. Because you can always, you might wonder, why week? Why is week mentioned 3 times here? Well, we'll actually look into that later. I don't know, maybe next week. Anyway, what else? What else do we see? Well, we're going to look at verse... we're going to look at the top, anyway. Yes, I did remember to do it. So verse 26a and 27a. So, shall Messiah be cut off? And on the other side it says, he shall confirm the covenant in the midst of the week. He shall he shall confirm the covenant in the midst of the week. He shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Verse 27a. Now the thing to notice about cutoff is cutoff has a very particular meaning. See, I've made a little summary of it. It means to cut in two, as in the Old Testament act of making a covenant. So from that you see that cutoff actually is connected to covenant. That's why I've put them both as dark red. But even mitts has a connection to cut too, because mitts roughly can be translated also as in the cut of the week. In the midst of the week can be roughly translated, or approximately, it means approximately in the cut of the week. So you have, according to this, the Messiah is cut in two, right, to make a covenant. And the week is cut in two. Now, here we'll look at the background information, or the background sources that give us this knowledge about this meaning of these, well, of cutoff and of mitts. Alright, so Daniel 9:26a's cutoff is the same term that's the same Hebrew term that appears in Jeremiah 34:18 as cut. The covenant which they had made before me when they cut the calf in twain and passed between the parts thereof. So here Jeremiah is saying that the way you make a covenant is you cut an animal in two and then you walk between the pieces. And that's what the picture is here, of course. And this term, this same Hebrew word, occurs in Genesis 15:18. The Lord made, or cut, a covenant with Abraham, or with Abram, I should say. Both. This is talking about Abram and, was it Abimelech? Anyway. Both of them cut a covenant, verse 21-27. And finally, let us make or cut a covenant. So once again, these are all using the same Hebrew term that's used in Daniel 9:26a. And if that's not enough, then we can also go to, let's see if I have everything in place. We can go and look at these terms up in Strong. Alright, so we're going to go to, there we go. We'll go to my website and we go into bibliography and we're going to go to page 4 to get Strong. Strong's Concordance. So here it is right here. Strong James, the exhaustive concordance of the Bible, New York, Eaton and Mans, Cincinnati, Jennings and Graham, 1890. Now we've actually already opened it up. Here it is. And now for the first one, for the cut off, we're going to go to page 57 of the Hebrew Dictionary. So should be around here. A little farther. Oh, we've gone too far now. Alright, so we need to go to page 57. Alright, we're almost there. Alright, so on page 57, we're supposed to be looking at 3772. It's right. Oh, that's not it. Oh, it's over here. Here we go. Yes, 3772. And we're going to cheat and go to an. There we go. 3772. Now the thing that's important is right here. It says specifically to covenant. So karath, a primitive root to cut, by implication to destroy or consume, specifically to covenant, i.e. make an alliance or bargain, originally by cutting flesh and passing between the pieces. Alright, so there's Strong's definition of karath. And that's the term, of course, that occurs in Daniel 9. What did I say? 926. Oh yes, 926a. So that's the term that is there. Alright, now in the midst. So in the midst is found on page 42. Let me check if my. Yep, everything's running very well. Alright, so page 42, and we're looking right here. 2677. So once again we have that expanded already. Oh no, I thought I did. I thought I did have it expanded. I didn't. Uh-oh. Let's see if this connection is good enough to. Oh yeah, it's really good. Alright. 2677. So here's our word. Chetsi or something. Oh, K-C. K-C. From 2673, the half or middle. Half, middle, mid, midst, part. Alright, so it doesn't really tell us anything other than the definition already, but it says it's from 2673. So let's go and look at 2673. And probably this is not really surprising that it gives us this definition. So, katsa, a primitive root, to cut or split in two, to have. So thus that's why I said to cut in two, because that's what the root actually means, to cut in two. So the week has been cut in two. Alright, so let's go back to our I don't. To me, it's just. To me, it's just amazing, you know? One of the reasons I put work into this is because people say that this covenant is actually the Antichrist who's making the covenant. But when you look at the Hebrew words, it can't be, right? The first thing we looked at was this fact that there's this repetition of words, and it forms a very clear pattern, right? One week or one desolation in verse 26, and then 2 weeks and 2 desolates in verse 27. And the desolations, of course, are tied to the sin, and we get that through, as I said, verse 13 of chapter 8. And we're going to see that the week actually has a connection too. But once again, that's deeper. It's only when you start to look at things that you see this. But anyway, so there's a clear connection here that ties these two verses together. And it's this tying together that says, no, this covenant is not about the Antichrist. This is about the Messiah. And of course, it talks about in the midst of the week, she shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And that's exactly what Christ did, because all the sacrifices that were being done in the temple were looking forward to Christ's sacrifice, to the Messiah being sacrificed. So when Jesus died, I mean, there was no point to doing sacrifice anymore. That's what Daniel says here, right? Shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And of course, it wasn't that long after Christ, right? 40 years after his crucifixion, that Jerusalem was destroyed and the temple was destroyed. So they couldn't do a sacrifice after that. But between AD 30 and AD 70, it was pointless for them to be doing it, even though they kept on doing it, because the true Lamb of God had come. But, yeah, so you see all these things that connect, the midst of the week and the cut of the week, and then it's connected to cut, and then cut, of course, has a very special meaning, which is to cut an animal in two, and so that's why I've drawn this thing here. So figuratively, when Christ died on the cross, he was cut in two. And right, we learn about the new covenant, and the way you make a covenant is to walk between the pieces. So, anyway, I mean, that's all for tonight. There is more to be said about this, but for now, that's all I have for now. But I hope and pray that this was piqued your interest again, that it was worth your time. I hope you are blessed, and I hope to see you again, because I mean, it is important. What the Bible has to say to us, especially now at this late hour in Earth's history. What the Bible says is stuff that we should all want to know. We should all want to understand, because it really emphasizes the fact that God has done everything for us. He loves us so much, and he's done everything, and he's even written all of these things into the Bible and hidden in there, but it emphasizes this fact that God has done everything for us. And he just wants us to choose him and to walk with him daily. And he promises that, if you choose me and you walk with me, I'm going to take care of everything else. I'll take care of changing who you are, of changing you so that you no longer sin. And the sin that you've done in the past, when it comes to the judgment, it's not you that stands, it's my perfect Son, right? It's Jesus Christ. Because as we saw before, the center of the judgment is not about judging us. It's about judging Satan. It's about ending this broken world. So you don't stand there. You don't stand in judgment. Of course, if you choose to not choose Christ, then you do stand in judgment. You stand in judgment with Satan. And I don't think any of us want to be there. Although I do know many people will choose that, because they don't want what God has to offer. But anyway, I just want people to clearly see what is in the Bible. To see that there is so much there that is hidden from our eyes, even though we can see it if we want to see it. Anyway, God bless, and I wish you a good night, And I hope to see you here tomorrow. Bye.